Hello. Hi, Dory. How is everyone? Hi, Amy. Hi, Marie.
Hi.
Hi. I'm imagining it might take a little bit longer to admit everyone this time, so we'll have those awkward moments in the beginning.
Totally fine. Hmm.
How is the weather out there in California?
It's like 50s, low 60s, and kind of overcast right now. The sun might come out later. Um, it was
Yeah.
like, you know, super warm a couple of days ago, but it's gotten cooler, which, that just means more studio time.
Yeah. I took a
How are
trip with
you?
my friend and we went to Alabama of all places. Um,
Oh,
we wanted to be in the mountains and just kind of enjoy some nature and explore a little bit. So we stayed in this teeny tiny little town. It was really nice. I got to see
sounds
some
nice.
waterfalls. Yeah, it was fun. We had
What's
kind
your
of
weather
different
like?
ideas of what we thought the trip was going to be. It was kind of funny. Um, I'm a big reader, so and I'm totally down for downtime. So I brought all these books with me, and she's not a big reader, so we did a lot of walking around and exploring, and then I sort of forced her to get out and hike with me, which
Mm.
she was a very good sport about and enjoyed. But I think I heard her say at one point, you said it was hot and then cold. And then, I mean, because we woke up one day and it was 41 degrees. And then the other day it was 80 degrees while we were hiking. And she was behind me on the trail and there were occasional bugs. I didn't feel like it was in Florida. We have bugs all the time everywhere. And there was this bit, like a bit, you could hear it, the big bug like dive bombing her. And she was like, she's like, I hate nature. I was like, maybe this wasn't the best vacation. We enjoyed it though. We compromised.
Good.
Hi
Right.
everyone. We're just kind of waiting for everybody to arrive right now. So chit-chatting a little bit. If you want to pop into the chat, you're welcome to do that and just introduce yourself, and you can say where you're coming from if you want. I was just visiting with Dory a little bit. She's in California. I'm in Miami. But feel free to just um, chat a little bit if you want, and you can be on screen or off screen. If you'd like to participate in conversation, then go ahead and be on screen. If you are somebody who doesn't like to participate in conversation, you can keep your screen off and I won't ever ask you for any kind of a response. Otherwise, Dory, it looks like it might just be you and me talking the whole time. Okay, well, we're about 5 minutes into it. So I'll go ahead and start, and it's being recorded. So if anybody wants to go back to it, I don't know if I have a way. So in the explore journey, it's set up on day 5. So if you haven't made it to day 5 yet, hey Raven, ooh, Asheville, I love it. I wanted to go there. I'll go there eventually. But if you haven't made it to day 5 yet, Iceland. Holy cow. That's amazing. I want to go there too. Iceland, I'm sure you hear it all the time. I always get confused. There's Greenland and Iceland, and I always think Greenland is the one that's supposed to be super green and beautiful, but it's actually Iceland that's super green and beautiful. Oh, in Florida. Hi, everybody. Thanks for stopping in and telling us where you're at. It's always interesting to see where everybody's coming from. Okay, so day 5 of Explored is where the studio session shows up. So if you haven't made it there yet, I am going to go in today once I have this recording, and I'm going to plug the recording in there, so you'll be able to watch it after the fact. And if you're on day 5 and you want the recording, just email me sarahschroederart@gmail.com. Or you can message me on Instagram and I can get you the link too. Haven't quite figured out how to get the recording to everybody yet. So if you do want it, let me know and I can email it to you or message it to you on Instagram. Oh, we have the Netherlands too. Well, welcome everybody. This is super exciting. I love to see where everybody is joining us from. We do have I feel like a diverse crowd in Inspired, so it's always fun. And we always have people with different backgrounds and just a fun place to be. So today, one of my favorite things to do is just play with watercolor. And because everybody is coming from a different set of skills and different backgrounds, I figured we would just kind of play with the watercolors. Two of my favorite things in using watercolor are bleeds and blooms. And I've talked about these before inside Inspired, and I talk about it in some of my classes, but it's just an easy one to play with, and it allows for a lot of freedom and experimentation. So I figured, why not just do that? So you're just going to need either a watercolor journal or watercolor paper, some watercolor paints, some brushes, some water, paper towel, just your normal watercolor things. And I did put on the supply list that you might want to have pens and pencils, things that you can embellish with after the fact, but you don't actually have to have that right now. If you don't want to use it, you may want to come back to it later and do it. So I thought what I would do is just show you some examples, and then we will get working. So if anybody has any questions, we only have a small group here today, so you can just unmute yourself and ask your question if you want to, or you can type it in the chat. And I might ask you, Dory, because we're super familiar. If you see something on the chat, would you just tell me, because I might miss it? Hi, Janet. How are you?
Good, very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you. So you just came on. Did you hear all that explanation?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, perfect. All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to switch my camera to my table. I'll show you a couple different examples and then talk about a few things, and then we'll just take some time to just experiment and play and have some fun. So bear with me while I switch my camera. I'm not always the best about that, but let's see if I can do it the right way. Ooh, look at that, first try. Okay, so these are some examples of just some, let's see, I'll pin mine to the top here so we always see. Okay, some examples of the blooms and the bleeds. So this right here is a bloom, and the bleeding happens right here between the two colors, where one color bleeds into the next color. And I always kind of say it, so it might start to sound like a broken record for people who are with me a lot, but a lot of people consider this kind of effect, more of a mistake than an intentional watercolor technique, but I love it. I just love the freedom of it and watching what the watercolor does. So I actually try to replicate it and include it in a lot of what I do. So that's one example. And here is another example. This I was just doing, I actually got some, this is the paint set that I collaborated with 31 Purple Fish, and I had just gotten it, so I wanted to test everything out together. So this is the color palette that I used with this. And you can see I just did like a single color here, and then everyone was a single color, but I allowed them to touch. So they started to bleed into each other, which kind of makes a really organic, natural, flowy kind of fun feel. So that is another way you can use the bleeds. And then this one, I just, again, was playing with the same color palette, just thinking about different ways I could do a little composition that was easy. Suzanne, the color palette actually we don't have anymore. It was a special collaboration that we did, but she does do new palettes all the time, and you can get on her email list, and you'll get an email every time she does one, and you can pre-order. She actually, I don't know if she has pre-orders available right now of a new palette, but she did just release a new palette, and the colors in that are really nice too. Okay, so I'm gonna just start by showing you just a really, we're gonna look at blooms first, because I feel like that's a good place to start. If you're not used to watercolor, one of the first things you can do is wet your paints to get them kind of activated and loosen them up a little bit before you actually need to start using them. So I just spritz them with water. And then I have several different brushes here. I almost always use a flat brush just because that's what I enjoy. And then sometimes when I'm mixing my colors, I'll use an acrylic brush instead, because it's really good at getting the paint activated and kind of juicy and full of, or just juicy, I guess. This you can see, I don't know if you can see how thick it is. I like it to be like cream kind of. I'm just adding clean water in to give myself a little bit more of a puddle and stirring that around. Okay, so one of the first things you can do, this is still my acrylic brush, but that doesn't really matter, is just make a line of really saturated color. So there's a lot of paint hitting your paper, and it's dry paper. And then if you take a brush of clean water and run it along that edge, you'll see that the paint starts to move towards the clean water, and this is the bloom. It moves out towards the water and starts to bloom, which I feel like is such a beautiful effect. And the more water you add, the more you can stretch your bloom across your paper. So you can do that as long as your pigment is wet, it will still bleed or bloom. You can see it on the bottom. It's not quite as wet anymore, so it doesn't have such aggressive flow. And then I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to do one more color. If I touch the color to the wet paper, it'll go towards the water again, blooming into the clear water part. And I'm going to pull it down here too. It's just fun to watch. Okay, so then for a bleed is when you have two colors and you allow them to flow into each other. So both of your paint strokes need to be wet. So I'll do 2 strokes and work quickly enough that they can start to move into each other. And the amount, that one didn't move a super whole bunch. There's some right there. The amount that it bleeds into another color, it really depends. You have to play with it a little bit to see how wet you need one or the other. Sometimes if it's a little more dry, one is drier than the other one, it'll work differently. You can see it's a little bit hard to see maybe because my camera is kind of far away, but you can see that the green is bleeding into the rusty red color. So that's your bleed. So then our thought now is how to use these to make sort of a fun, easy composition. So like I said before, one of the samples I had was a stacking strokes. These bleed into each other and bloom a little bit. Let's see, I'm looking for is there a new message here? No, it was just about the palette, right? And then there was the sample of the circles. So I'm just going to move through both. I'll probably start with the circles. Something I noticed, and this is what you can do too as you're working, is you can start to think about what did you like? What do you want to try to replicate again? What maybe would you change next time? On some of these, I really, really like how rich the color is. But then I was kind of thinking I might like to not, I also like this one here where the color is a little bit more, less opaque. So I'm going to focus a little bit on trying to make that happen a little bit and mix it with the really intense opaque colors. So there's a little bit more variation. The sketchbooks that I'm using, you can find them on Amazon. They're by US Art Supply. These are a 10 by 10. I was just looking before I started this session so I could share with you. I don't think that they make this size anymore. As far as I could find you might be able to find it not on Amazon, someplace else. These are 10 by 10 watercolor journals, or on Amazon it just says watercolor book. But you can get 2 of them for $22. I love these ones because I don't feel so precious about using them, and I can write on one side and paint on the other side, and it makes a really nice journal that doesn't feel so precious, scary to use the clean page. I think they have 9 by 12 now, and then they have another one that's like a horizontal. I'm not sure the measurement, like, I don't know, maybe 4 by 8 or 6 by 8 or something like that. It's a longer one. Okay, so I'm going to start with the circles. And like I said before, I almost always use a flat brush, but that's just personal preference. You can use whatever you want, whatever feels good to you. And I'm going to start with loading my brush with paint, rather than wetting my paper first, because I like that really intense color. It's at least just to start with. And I also like the idea of not having everything perfect. So I don't pre-draw any circles or make any special kind of grid. I just get going with it. You see they came together right there, and they're combining. I also like to leave a little bit of the white spots in there just for some variety, but you can close those off if you want to. feel like this blue is pretty intense, so I don't want to have it loaded quite as much as the other colors. Still pretty deep and intense. Same blue, I just added a little bit of water. See if I can get it less intense in color. Hi, Carmen. We're just painting in our journals now using watercolor. I'm using a flat brush. This is cold press paper. And we're just letting the colors, as we lay them down, we're letting them touch so that they bleed into each other and create this really nice sort of organic flowy effect. I really like how this yellow moved into the purple here and how the blue is moving into the purple. We have a nice combination going on here. And even this blue, moving into the yellow here is nice. So the idea is to work not like crazy fast, but fast enough that you're able to let your two wet fields, the circles that you're making, that they're still wet and you can let them touch and let the colors move into each other. And you can play with how opaque and intense your circle samples are by how much you load your brush and how much water you add to your paint as you're mixing it. I have this lovely gold here that takes a little bit of work to get it really juicy. So I'm going to work on that for a second. We've got some fun bleeds happening. This one right here is my favorite so far. It's got a little bit of everything happening. And I'm kind of making this loosish kind of grid of circles that isn't totally even, but I can even it out by how big I make each circle. And make them play with each other. Adding a little bit more gold on this one so it is a little more opaque. This is kind of a fun exercise to get lost in if you just need a little downtime and feel like being curious. So something I'm thinking about too as I'm doing this is what it might be like if I were to change the brush I use next time and use something small that takes a lot of strokes to finish a circle and just see how that feels. And sometimes if you want a little more bleeding between your circles, you can add a little bit of water at the points where they touch, and that'll open up a little channel where they can run into each other. And this, if you're looking to add more color, you can always load your brush up and add it to the wet area. This is called charging. Okay, so that is my little circle composition. You guys can keep working at your own pace. Enjoy. I'm going to move to another journal now, and I'll do the stacked paint strokes like this one. This is really relaxing and fun too. Just fun to really get lost in it and start playing and enjoy the feeling of just watching things happen and letting the watercolor have its own life. Okay, so in case if you missed the first little intro that I was doing, to get the blooms, we're going to load our brush, a wet brush with wet paint on dry paper. And we're going to start with a line, and we're doing lines and circles in this exercise today. But once you do this and you get a feel for how the watercolor moves together, you can start combining it in just so many different ways. I mean, you can't even imagine how many ways. It's endless, the possibilities. I'm just starting with the straight stacked lines and the circles because it's a pretty low stress, fun, easy thing to start with. This is the wet paint added to the dry paper. And then the water just added to the paper, but touching that line. To me, this is so mesmerizing to watch. So you can do it on the top and the bottom, or you can do just the bottom or just the top. It depends on where you want your paint to flow and how you want your colors to mix. And a little bit more of this towards this end. I want this to stay wet long enough for me to get my water over there. And if you want to encourage your paint to flow one direction or the other, you can always tilt it towards the water to get it to go a little bit further. This will start to move into the wet part that I have of the blue. You can see it's kind of doing some cool stuff there. And then you can test out what it feels like to add the pigment right here on that color right there. Let's see what happens. May bleed a little bit, may not, depending on how dry the paint is. You can always add a little drop of water if you want to encourage them to mix a little bit more. If I drop it right here, it's going to make the purple and the orange move together. Now this brush holds more water, so when I put it down, it was really wet and it moved right into the orange. Keep calling it orange. I think it's called Rusty Rose. I think the name of the color is Rusty Rose. It's not really orange. I love when this starts to happen. you want to vary the thickness of your line, you can always twist your brush if you're using a flat brush. Okay, so that is all for the stacked brush strokes. This is something where you could come in later and you could embellish it with marks with your pencil or with a micron pen. Gel pens would be really cool. You could even come in with a little bit of paint or ink afterwards and do some embellishments. But that's that. And then the other example I had was this little grid. And this one, I can't tell you where to get this book. My sister gave me this. She bought it at it's handmade. She bought it at a craft fair. So I can't tell you where to get it. I'm sorry, but I do love this one. It feels like such a, like a hand-me-down treasure. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do swipes of each color. I'm going to spread them out a little bit so they're not necessarily evenly dispersed over the page, but I'll put a little bit of thought into where they're going, and I'm not going to make any special arrangements or treatments to make sure they don't touch. I actually like when they do touch, and I don't have to be crazy about trying to keep them all perfectly in a grid. You can see like by the time it's 4 colors across every time, but up here I started, it's much narrower up here than it is down here. But either way, it still feels really pleasing and satisfying just to make it, but also looking at it. So I'm going to do that. It's another relaxing little exercise that doesn't take a ton of thought, and you can just let yourself get lost in the flow of it. I find that the flat brush is really actually useful in doing these little swipes. And I like to load my brush once and then use it a few different times so that the intensity of the color varies a bit. It's not super opaque every time.
Sarah, there's a question about granulating, if you want to be able to talk about that.
Oh, okay. Let's see. So I believe, and I'm not an expert on watercolor, but I do believe that granulated watercolor it allows for a lot of different texture in the paint. So where sometimes you might paint and it looks pretty even, the granulated watercolor gives you a lot of texture, and you can see some different coloration even after the paint is dry. Let me see if I can find a good example here without. So with some watercolors, you won't get this variety here. Hang on, just let me. So like right here, you won't necessarily see all the, it almost looks like a river, like riverbed or roots happening right here with watercolor that doesn't granulate a lot. You won't see as much of that. And here where you see it's almost like sediment settling into the texture of the cold pressed paper. You won't get that in paint that's not granulated. So I use a lot of granulated watercolor because I love the variety, and it feels the look it gives, I feel like, has a very organic feel to it, which I like. And then sometimes with other watercolors, it looks very, it's more consistent. So you can see almost everything I do has the granulated effect in it. I don't know if that's the kind of answer you were looking for or not, but because I am not an expert on watercolor, I don't know if I can really help you with what you were looking for. But you can see here too, that green area has it, the aqua colors down there have the granulation. It's just to me a more like a juicier texture. I say juicy, but I don't know what can you think of a word I'm looking for? It's just like more to me, it's more satisfying. I don't know. There's just more to it. There's more texture visually to a granulated watercolor. Can you add expertise?
Yeah, I would say earthy because,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of these pigments actually come from the earth, and my understanding is the more granulating ones have actually more earth pigments, and so they do separate and they mix together in really interesting ways, and I love them also.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. This is the great thing about having people who are familiar with painting in the group with us. No, I'm not adding granulated medium. No. Yeah, no, these are the ones from 31 Purple Fish, which I love. So I just intentionally buy the ones that already have that in them. I've never used a medium to make it happen, but that's good to know. For this one, I'm just going to flip my page because when I make the first stroke, it's really intense. And so I want the intensity to be varied around the page. These ones probably won't bleed into each other that much because they're a little dry after having a little pause there. So if I want to, I can add little droplets of water to make them move together. Or I can come back in and add a little bit of the blue. This one I want to move fairly fast too, so that I can take advantage of the two colors being wet next to each other. I have this one empty little square over here that I'm going to put gold. It's the only time I've used gold in this page, but I think that'll be fun to have it right there in the middle. Maybe I'll do one up here too. Even everything a little bit. Okay. So that's the end of that page. We're coming up towards the end of the studio session, but something I like to do when we're done with our journal pages is a little bit of reflection. So on the opposite page from where you've been painting, you can make some notes for you. I'm going to write some questions into the chat, and you can copy them into your notebook or piece of scratch paper so that you can use it later if you would like to. And then at the end, if anybody would like to share, you're welcome to. I'm feeling like we might have a lot of no's in that regard with this one. But I'm a couple minutes to write and share if we would like to.
No, me too. Oh shit.
Just switching my camera. The effect. Oh, yes. Yeah, it was very relaxing. I agree. I like this as sometimes I just do this one over and over again because I find it's so soothing. Amy says it was very nice and relaxing to play with the colors. Yes, I agree.
I want to share my page because it's very colorful.
Mhm. Are you sharing? Let me see if I can see you. Are you sharing it?
Yeah.
Let me unpin myself. Hang on a second. So I can see you. Oh, yeah. It is very, oh, and I love how you did the on the opposite page.
Yeah, I made my own book, so I have a flip page. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
already started to swatch my colors, and there
Uh-huh.
were some space left. So I did the last exercise for a small time, but it's very wet, so I can't make the bloom page. But I
Yeah.
will try tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you for
Time to
sharing. I love the
relax
colors
again.
that you used.
Yeah, I've a very small palette of colors.
Mhm.
So normally I will mix my own colors.
Oh,
But your colors are very, how to say, interesting, because I didn't choose that colors together. But
mm.
if you use them together, it's very nice.
Yeah. It is interesting the things that happen because I think when you're doing exercises like this, at least the way it works for me is that I just get lost in applying the paint and watching them together, and I don't care so much about what colors I use and
Yeah,
how they might combine. And then all of a sudden there's something that shows up that I never would have put together before. So
yeah,
it's fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I do love your book. Did
Thank you.
you say that you make it? You made that book?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
very cool.
I
Yeah.
started to make a book for every month. So it's very
Oh, nice.
small, because uh, it's very hard to end a book I buy, because it's very thick. And
Yeah.
then I don't like the size anymore, uh, lay it beside, and then I don't want to pick it again. So I
Yeah.
thought I make them by myself. I have one period to finish it, and then
Yeah.
can in a box, and it's finished.
Yeah, it is nice to be able to finish. And then you know exactly how much you need for that month. That's
Yeah,
perfect. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah. Amy said it's very relaxing and no thoughts. Yes, I agree. That is one of the nicest things about it is you just get lost. Not so much thinking involved.
I'm happy to
Oh,
share.
okay. Thank you.
Uh,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, I'll try to get closer. This is a good example right here of granulation.
Yeah.
You can really like the
Do you
earthiness
use the
of
same
that.
color palette?
Mm-hmm.
I use the
Yeah,
same
we
as
have.
Sarah, actually.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like I love so in these particular compositions, I like that they feel organized because they're just the stacked lines, but then there's all kinds of freedom in that at the same time with how they're bleeding together and moving and everything. Um, and I like seeing how other people's come out too, because they're similar. We're doing similar things, but everybody ends up with a little bit of a different result. Suzanne is requesting, I'm sorry, I don't know if I know how to say your name. Is it
Nienke,
Ninka?
but it's
Okay.
Dutch, very hard for everybody.
Ninka. Okay. Well, thank you for telling me. Yes. Can you show us the cover too, or is
Yeah,
everything
of
wet so you
course.
can't really close it?
Yeah, it's a little bit wet. No, we'll try. It's with
Uh,
doors,
uh-huh.
and there are a lot of things inside.
Uh-huh.
But this one I really like.
Yeah. I love the fold out pages too. That's fun.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have any questions or like to share a little bit before we go? I know it takes a little bit of bravery. That's okay though. Okay, well, if anybody has any questions, you're welcome to reach out to me on Instagram, or you can send me an email. And then I hope if you are getting the Explore journey that you're enjoying that. There is another, we have a co-work hour coming up on Monday, which is fun. We just show up and we visit a little bit. That one we do a little bit more chatting in the beginning. We have a fun little question that's kind of like an icebreaker, and we can get to know each other a little bit. And then we take a steady, maybe like 30 minutes to work kind of quietly on our project. It's not like we can't talk, but usually people get so into their project that they're not talking in that moment or in those moments. So And then at the end of our work, we'll come back together again and we can share what we are working on. And it doesn't have to be, it's your own project. I don't guide that one. It's just an opportunity for us to come together and use the group energy to get something done. So you can bring a sketchbook or an art journal, or you can bring, you know, anything that you're needing to get done, even if it's writing based or home decor based, whatever you want. It's just your 30 minutes that's on the calendar to come join the group and use the group energy to get your project worked on. And at the same time, make some friends and have a little conversation. So you're welcome, Amy. Thank you for being here. And we'll see you guys Monday. All right.
Thanks for hosting.
Yeah, of course. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you for everything. Bye, Dory.
Bye.
Everyone.
All right,
Bye,
thank you.
Sarah.
Bye.